Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Back to the TARDIS podcast. I'm Jeff.
I am Aurora.
And I'm Lumine.
And this week we are discussing Season 17, Story 2, City of Death, by, quote, David Agnew, which is a pseudonym that actually refers to a combination of the show's producer, Graham Williams, and a little-known author by the name of Douglas Adams. So, yeah, Douglas Adams wrote this episode, and it is very, very obvious because I think this is quite possibly, if not the funniest, one of the funniest fucking Doctor Who stories I have ever seen.
Yeah, this was like genuinely at multiple points. I was just like laughing. I was like, because I watched this episode when I was I watched this story when I was a kid, and I don't think I appreciated just how funny Tom Baker was back then. And this time I was just like, oh my god, this guy is hilarious.
Yeah, and like the last one that we did was for 4 was Genesis, which is obviously one where he's being played much more seriously because it's a much more serious situation. But here it's like, like the gang is on vacation. They're in Paris. They're just about, and he is absolutely refusing to take any of this shit seriously until the very end.
It's really funny because I don't think it's something you wouldn't get now. Nowadays, the Doctor is like, oh, there's some shit going on. Time to be serious, Doctor. And now he's like, I'm on vacation.
Yeah. Like I was thinking about this too, because the other thing that I thought about this episode is that while there are obviously some vibe-wise and visual differences from the modern show, this story feels surprisingly not dated at all.
I think part of that is that, I don't know, at least for me, sensibilities change over time, but like a lot of older TV shows and even especially movies are just like they hadn't figured out pacing
Yes.
yet, or at least not to like modern sensibilities. And this, despite it being, an extended, 4-part story, it might just be like partly due to like the interspersing of like comedy and like splitting up the like TARDIS team for a bit and just the time you spend with everybody. But like it just like the time flowed for me.
Yeah.
I was having a blast throughout the entire thing.
Yeah, the only times I really felt like I ran into like minor pacing quibbles was like going, oh, some of these exterior shots of the two of them wandering around are going on for a bit longer than I feel like they usually should. But other than that,
yeah, those are the we're in Paris shots.
Yes.
Okay, honestly, I appreciated that. I was like, because they mostly only do it at the start, and I was just like, this is such a nice mood setting thing. And I really liked the soundtrack on this episode. Like, that's a weird thing to say, but this series, or like this story, has a really good soundtrack.
Yeah. Which this was the first Doctor Who story to be filmed on location outside the UK. Wow. They did actually go to Paris. I read a piece of trivia that Douglas Adams, who was famous for being absolutely terrible at following deadlines, knocked this one out in a couple of days because he was really jazzed to go to Paris and get shit-faced.
Real. Yeah, back to the point about it feeling like a modern story, like it specifically feels like it could be a 9 story.
Oh, interesting. I was thinking it would be very at home in like Moffat, like 12 Clara.
I don't know. I just feel like it fits 9 more. There's just something about like, I really want to blow this off, but I can't. And also there's like a space refugee doing some bad shit. And he like fucked with he somehow contributed to humans existing. that
Yeah.
that very specific combination is like such a 9 thing.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing that I definitely want to praise about this episode is that I'm also surprised by like the quality of like the supporting cast. Like the villain is fantastic, and the fucking idiot detective that they have around is also really funny.
There's some great character actors in this. I looked up the antagonist, the you know, Glup Shido alien
Yeah.
race that we never hear from again. But I looked him up, and he was like the main Nazi in
Indiana Jones.
yeah, in that the one who like gets his face melted.
No. I thought it was is it in Raiders of the Lost Ark? I thought it was in Last Crusade.
It's Last Crusade.
Okay.
So I guess not. I guess not face
Yeah,
melted, but like
he's the one who drinks, who chooses poorly and drinks the potion. That
I thought I recognized him. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. So I got the wrong way he dies.
Apparently he's
Still
also
Nazi.
apparently he's also a random like imperial like general in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, he's the main one in the Imperial Walker at the beginning on the ice planet. I'm a Star Wars geek. Hello. But yeah, it's good to see him. Just moments where like everybody in Hollywood does everything.
Yeah. And I mean it's commendable because like it's really hard to keep up with Tom Baker when it comes to like feeling like you are on equal footing acting wise, and he's doing it.
Yeah, I was really shocked by Ramona. I didn't know she, okay,
Ramona,
like yeah, I don't like remember stuff about this episode a lot, so I didn't know she was like a Time Lord, and so that really surprised me. But I was just really like entertained by their banter because I was like,
Yeah.
you just don't get dialogue like this anymore.
Well, yeah, and also like I respect RTD's decision to frame the companion role as like the audience surrogate character and to be like the human element of the show. But there definitely is something to the dynamic of the two of them just dicking around Paris talking some bullshit because they're both basically immortal super beings in comparison.
Yes. Like I absolutely like
Yeah.
I get the wanting a human companion to ground things or whatever, but you know, we sort of talked about this with Nardole, but I want more alien companions because it's so much fun. And you know, the best part about this dynamic, I think, is you get to learn that the Doctor really is a fucking weirdo. Like it's not just Time Lords, it's him. Because you know, I love the scene where they go to the Louvre and he's like, "Oh my God, this is like the best museum in the whole universe," and she's like, "No, it's not." And you just get the real sense that he's just a total humanaboo freak.
Yeah.
Like, no, they're not
Yeah.
like this. It's just him.
For the type of guy to show Romana 100 Gex and she doesn't get it.
She really is brilliant. I love her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like their chemistry. Y'all were talking about like, oh, this could be like a 9 episode, this could be a 12 episode. I actually thought like, I don't know, potentially like 10, just in terms of like having, and I think what it was for me is having a Doctor like companion relationship that like feels like they're not like on the same level, but it's just like they've been around a bunch, which is neat.
That's kind of why I said 12 Clara, because they stick together for a long time. I think the difference with 10 is that 10 would actually take this shit seriously.
Well, okay. I think you're right. When I thought of 10, I thought of like the series 2 10 who like with Rose just would not give a shit about anything. So yeah, but that's another thing. Yeah, you still get some of the human element, like I don't know if you want to say like fish out of water or like seeing the Doctor through a modern person's eyes, but you kind of get that with the detective a little bit, but it's still nice to see. Also, I did want to bring up props to the actress for Romana, Lala Ward, I think, who I guess decided to wear this kind of like schoolgirl-ish like
Yeah.
outfit, like on vacation kind of thing. Apparently trivia-wise because she wanted to like model it for younger girls to like not think it was like stupid or like kind of like elevated a bit. But then the unintended consequence of that is of course like getting letters from like older fans being like, hey, nice schoolgirl outfit, and I'm just like, damn it, you can't have anything nice.
Cishet dude nerds are literally incapable of being normal.
Jeez, that sucks because that is such a cute outfit.
Yeah.
It was, and it also kind of is just like, this is her own way of just like not really understanding human fashion, but like in a different way. So yeah, big fan of the Romana character. I think for the first episode I've ever seen her in, unless she was in the last Fourth Doctor.
No,
one completely forgot.
That was Sarah and Harry. I have seen one Romana 1 episode, or maybe 2 actually. And I think Shada, which is also Romana 2, but this is the first one I've seen with Romana 2 in a while. I will also say part of this chemistry might also be a part because of the fact that Tom Baker and Lala Word were married for like a year and a half around this time.
Love to see it.
But yes, you really don't get to see something happen like this in modern Doctor Who, where like pretty much like the entire first episode, which is like 25 minutes, is just them dicking around Paris. Like they're just screwing around for 90% of it and then getting chased down by Duggan the detective and then just talking rings around him.
I love Duggan in this. Like,
yeah.
Oh my god. He just feels like one of these like one-off episode characters that they just nail. Like, he does everything they need to, and he has like such a simple bit that they set up and have the perfect payoff for. Like, what else do you need?
I kept expecting them to do the thing where he tries to go and hit something and it doesn't work, and surprisingly, pretty much every time it's actually used, it actually works.
That's the best thing. He's shown, like, the problem isn't that he's bad at punching people, it's that he's so fucking good at punching people.
That he doesn't have any other ideas, yes.
Just like, this is your guest party member. He does DPS.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But yeah, no, the back and forth dialogue between like Romana and 4, especially in this first episode, you can just tell how Douglas Adams it is. Like it's his specific blend of like extraterrestrial absurdism that you get in like Hitchhiker's Guide.
No wonder it was so funny and witty.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, this isn't anything new. Like, he literally, like, stole bits from some of his Doctor Who episodes to work into some of the later Hitchhiker's Guide stuff and Dirk Gently and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. And then, you know, just there's constant little throwaway lines and dialogue, like when they're in the Louvre and they're looking at the Mona Lisa. And she's like, why doesn't she have any eyebrows? And 4's like, what the fuck are you oh my god.
My favorite bit there was she just goes like, it's pretty good. Because of course she thinks it's just pretty good. She's seen alien museums. And 4, this little fucking weirdo, is like, this is literally the single greatest thing that has ever happened in the entire universe.
Yeah. Four is me talking about like Shin Kamen Rider, and Romana is normal people.
It's literally like when you're out with your autistic friend vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also a really funny line here too which is extreme, like this wasn't meant to be funny in 1979, but given a 2023 context is extremely funny when she's talking about Gallifreyan art just being done by computers.
I caught that line too. That was incredible. That was like at the end, but it's like the line
Well,
about.
it's at the end, yes,
Oh,
but
did she
it's a
mention it earlier
callback
too?
to she mentions it earlier on,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And Four's like, no, it sucks because there's no real people behind it.
Topical.
Yeah, which is just really fucking funny in context. Other great line when they have like the weird time shenanigan that throws all of them off, and Four falls over and faints, where like he gets up and says to Duggan, it's like, no, I'm fine, I just dented my head on your gun.
There were some moments in here where I'm really like, maybe the Doctor doesn't change. Maybe this is just like who the Doctor is, like at his core. Because that line was
Yes.
so just the Doctor.
Yeah. And it's peak Four too, how like he's fainting and falling over and causing a scene, and in the middle of it he nabs the fucking bracelet which he noticed out the corner of his eye because he's like, that's alien. You
my
shouldn't
favorite
have
part
that.
my favorite part is the payoff with the bracelet where they're like getting interviewed or where they're getting like interrogated, and he's like, oh, I stole it because it just looks so pretty. And they're like, you were in a museum, why didn't you steal paintings? And he says, oh, well, I tried that, but all sorts of alarms go off.
Yeah. It really, like, the dialogue in this really manages to ride the perfect line of like, there's always this dichotomy with the sillier doctors, your twos, your fours, your sevens, where it's like, to some extent they are being silly and goofy on purpose to hide the fact that they can fuck you up. But Four in this episode really feels like he is in a like quantum superposition of somehow being both entirely serious with his complete nonsense bullshit and just fucking around at the same time. I'd also like to say one of my favorite fucking bits in the entire... Oh no. No, okay, it's not in this it's not in part 1. It's in between part 1 and part 2. I'm just going to point this out now, is my favorite bit in the entire episode, which is totally just a background throwaway gag, is when they're in the restaurant with Duggan and they're talking with him, and the two like mafia looking dudes who are working for Scarleone show up to kind of bring them in to talk to the Count. And the Count's like, okay, just deal with them off screen, I don't want them to talk. And then like the next time that goons show up, it's two basically identical looking dudes in black that like aren't the same person but look the same.
That's incredible. I will say I love the end of part 1 where they're
Yeah.
talking and he's like, Ramona, do you know the man who was following us across all those areas? And she's like, yes. Well, I believe he's pointing a gun in my back. And then it just ends.
Yes. I think it's really funny too how like I don't know the context of what France in 1979 was like, but they're being really blasé about having guns out and pointing them at people, and like nobody seems to care. Like there are multiple times where guns are being pointed at people in public places by people who are like not clearly not police officers, and nobody cares.
If I were that restaurateur, I would not be letting those people back in my restaurant.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, they're English.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But yes, this sets off the bit of like, you'd think that across a 90-minute long story that the bit of Duggan just not understanding what the fuck is going on ever would get tired, but somehow it doesn't. Like, he doesn't know what the hell is going on, but he's also just kind of rolling with it because he doesn't know what else to do.
It very much reminds me of the guy later in the past. And the Doctor's like, do you really believe all this alien stuff? And he's like, I work for the burgers. Of course I have to believe it. Or like, or something like...
The Borgias.
Yeah, the Borgias. Well, that's like the burgers. I work for the elites. I just do what I'm told. Closing my ears, not my problem. They can believe whatever they want.
Yeah, I will also say, like, Because the end of episode 1 also has the cliffhanger where he does like the Mission Impossible mask rip. I have in my notes like lol Slitheen because it is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But also like even though the mask does look kind of cheap, it kind of works and they use it sparingly too. Like it only comes off there and then in the final episode. Which I think is if anything, it plays to its strengths because you get to see Julian Glover's like face acting for most of the Count's dialogue instead of like just talking to this alien.
How that alien sees with the Cyclops eye in that mask.
And the face perfectly animates. Yeah, no, it's Mission Impossible bullshit. Don't think too hard about it. But yes, it really is great too how like it feels so perfectly Doctor Who that like 90% of the confrontations with the main villain of this episode are just them like verbally combating each other.
It's incredible.
Like, yeah, like, you know, this first time when they go to the mansion and the Doctor is like, oh my God, look at these chairs. These are so nice. And to the point where like when Duggan tries to like pick one up and hit someone with it, he's like, no, that's a really nice chair. Put it down.
The humanity moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because like you get all the shots of like, hey, we're in France, we're in Paris, but then there's like other moments where it's just like, oh yeah, this is Doctor Who because we're spending the like rest of like the 60-70% of this episode in like the same like 4 locations.
Yes. Clearly in the BBC studios. Are either of you familiar with a Monty Python sketch where there's like the group of them in a room in like a BBC studio and they're playing like government members and they're talking about some bullshit and they go to the window and look out and the camera angle changes to an exterior shot and they go, good Lord, we're on film. I just kept thinking of that in this episode.
Yeah. It's appropriate.
There's also in this first scene, and obviously we're being a little bit loose with the plot summary here because it is kind of just fucking around and going through the motions, but like it's the most delightful fucking around and going through the motions that I think I've ever seen from this show. With where he's verbally sparring with the Countess, and we have one of the most iconic 4 lines ever where he goes, well, you're a beautiful woman, probably.
That is just incredible. Like I think I wrote that line down. It was just like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
It's like it's you know, like it ties in so great too to like some of like 12 shit too, where like he doesn't recognize that he looks old, or like when he talks to like the aged Clara in Last Christmas, he can't tell that she's aged either. I love that angle of like he just can't tell and doesn't bother.
So you read that as like genuinely not knowing instead of him fucking with her?
I mean, it is a dig too, but I think again, quantum superposition where he's both being serious and fucking around at the same time.
Very true. Yeah, I'm obsessed with just like the episode is or like the whole story is literally them just like leaving and coming back to the same room.
Yes.
And then they talk a little bit and then they run off again. And then they're like, oh man, we got to go back to the room again.
Yeah. Like the TARDIS shows up like very briefly. And even though it gets used to go somewhere else, like it feels like such an afterthought.
This is an example of like how if you do proper like plotting, you don't need to like fill your story with a bunch of like dense like, and then they do this, and then they do this, and then they do this. Because if you go like on paper, what happens? It's just like, okay, Doctor and Romana in France find out this scheme where they're going to steal the Mona Lisa and then like sell off a bunch of like copies, but they're authentic because bullshit. Get a lot of money, do the time travel thing. His like species is reborn. Like that's so like fucking simple.
Yeah.
And then if you look on paper, like what they do with that, of just like the comedy, the like going from A to B to C to D, it's just like that seems like it's deceptively complicated. It's wonderfully simple. And you get some actors that you can just trust, like you can roll with this, and they absolutely do.
Yeah, it's like if it weren't for the fact that they went to fucking Paris to do location shooting, this would almost be a budget episode because it's set in the modern day. 90% of all of the stuff is not interacting with like any super sci-fi stuff. There's the model shot at the beginning and the weird prop in the basement, but even then that's not like a super in-depth prop. And the Jaggeroth suit, which comes out very briefly, but otherwise it is super budget. Like there's nothing crazy in this episode. Though that being said, I thought it was really funny that the model shots, I guess they had like the original film for those that they could go back to for the Blu-ray versions, but like those fucking model shots were the best looking parts of the entire episode. They looked classy as fuck.
I'm really curious what the effect they did was that like sucks it in, like right before the explosion.
I feel like it had to be like a physical, like they crinkled the film or like took a still and crinkled that and filmed that. That like that's what it looks like. It looks like the film itself is physically being crinkled.
Low budget magic.
Yeah.
The like wonkiest like meh thing that you could say this episode does is like when I forget the scientist's name. It's just like
it's just some scientist.
showing off the thing of like on the eggs, and it's just like you get that like clearly like Compton like slightly I guess like see-through like transparent chicken and then the bones, but it's just like again it's like if you do that well it's just like well that's like eerie and uncomfortable. And then they do that. I think there's that final shot of like when the scientist gets put in front of that thing, and even that looks like pretty damn good. So overall as you said, like almost budget vibes if it weren't for Paris. And even then I don't know how with like the economics of when TV was done like this, when Doctor Who was done like this, it's just like I'm sure it makes sense, but it's just like it feels quite different from how Doctor Who is done obviously today with like the Disney money and everything, but like New Who too, even like
I think
what
I think the only reason they went to Paris is because they were originally going to like recreate Paris in like BBC Studios, and someone went, that would cost as much money as just going to Paris.
Yeah, it's much easier to go to Paris from London.
I will also say, so I didn't take a lot of notes for this one just because I was enjoying the vibes so much that I kept forgetting to like write anything down. But the last note that I do have in here is when they're locked up in the cellar and they break into this side room and they're like, oh, we gotta break through these bricks, and it's so clearly like fucking like plaster or styrofoam shit that is so weightless.
Classic.
That's how you know how you're watching some old ass sci-fi. It's like I was also thinking this is getting way ahead, but like when they jump back to like the prehistoric Earth, and I'm looking at this set, and like I have not watched very much original series Star Trek, but the stuff that I have seen is like, where's Kirk? He's supposed to jump out from behind a rock and fight some dudes.
He should have fought the Jaggeroth.
I mean, Duggan essentially is kind of the Kirk of the episode. In terms of being like the normal one. But yes, I like too, it's such a crazy plot of like not just even like making forgeries of the Mona Lisa, making identical copies of the Mona Lisa hand painted by Leonardo himself, even though that wouldn't, like, you can't physically copy that by just doing it again. It would very obviously be a different painting.
Just like, look, Leo, you need to get this broad to sit here like 6 more times.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
Like it's such a crazy plot, but it also like it works, and it makes this, it fits in so well with the like super like witty like white collar upper class feel of the episode.
Yeah, my favorite part about this is like the plan is really obvious from pretty early on. Like I think
Yeah.
even as a kid, I was like, "Oh, so he just went back in time and had him make more Mona Lisas." That's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter because it works so well, anyways.
Yeah. It's also really great when Scarleone comes in here when they're looking at the fucking Mona Lisas, and the doctor like tries to get shit out of him, and he's just like no to every question. And the doctor's like, I like concise answers, and he's like, good. It like the back and forth here with the two of them is so goddamn funny. And then, yes, 4 runs off and goes back to 1505. I really like to, it's such an inventive idea that feels so much more playful with the series' like core conceits, to like have this idea, even if they don't really show it other than this one other person, and like some implications in one shot of like, yeah, this person has been splintered into different versions dispersed throughout history, and has,
This man's been impossible girled.
yeah. And like, yeah, you don't see as much of it, and it's not like there's a Big Finish drama called Seasons of Fear, where it's like there's a guy who is immortal, and the 8 and Charlie keep like trying to like go through his like timeline to figure out like where he becomes the villain, essentially. And obviously that goes a bit more in depth because they don't have to do any visuals, so it's less expensive to go to a completely different time period. But it feels so much more interesting than like most of what the show does now with time travel. And like, I don't, obviously I'm a New Who stan. Like that's where I came into this whole thing. It is just interesting sometimes when you go back to older stuff and be like, oh yeah, they'll be way more adventurous with the whole time travel thing than like most modern episodes, where they generally pick like a time span and stick to it.
Yeah.
Aside from like rare occasions.
My favorite bit was when the scientist is making the machine and the doctor walks up and he's like, "Did you know you could do this with it?" and flips a big fuck off lever and then it turns time backwards. And he's like, "What
Yeah.
did you do?" And he's like, "I reversed the polarity, obviously."
And like that's self-referential humor
Yeah,
too at
I
this
know
point.
that
Like that's them making fun of themselves.
Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, of course, the scientist like didn't know what his own machine did, and that flipping the single big lever on it would make it go backwards, of course.
Yeah. But yes, it's great, and it allows for like interesting non-linearity in the narrative, where like they go back, like the like 4 goes back to the 1500s to try and drop in on Da Vinci. And it's really funny too how he's talking like he's met Da Vinci before, and he probably has.
Yeah.
But it's him. He has.
Yeah, he absolutely has. But he runs into the Count, and despite the fact that they've gone back in time, like the Count, like because of the fact that they were split and they're not like, it's not the same person going through linearly, like they're picking up their conversation where they left off in the future.
Yeah.
And that threw me too, because I thought that the answer was going to be then that Skaroth had time travel and was jumping back and forth and kind of micromanaging these different eras.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be that he was like super long lifespan and had been stranded there and was like developing humanity to be able to like build the stuff he needed to get off the planet. So this is,
Yeah.
I like did the him picking up the conversation surprised me too. That part like got me.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating, like, interesting way to do this concept.
And it's clear, like, over the course of events, it's clear, like, he becomes, like, more aware
Yeah.
of the, like, full scope of his plan. And, like, by, like, the last episode, he has it, like, all together. But it's like he's struggling at first. It's, like, fucking painful for your fucking psyche and, like, aspects of your whole, like, self to be splintered
Yeah.
through time and space. So they, like, yeah, there's just, like, small touches
Yeah.
that, like, you don't need to have, but it's, like, it's neat.
Yeah.
You know, I like it.
And it's like in a different episode, that would be like so much of a focus. But here, it's like just an additional layer on top of a funny episode that makes it be a little bit more than just the hee hee ha ha episode.
And another thing they do, I'm sure there's, like, maybe scenes or sequences where they do this, but, like, I can't think of, off the top of my head, like, full episodes or, like, half episodes of New Who that are just like, yeah, you know, you, companion, you do, like, current day stuff. I'm gonna fuck off to, like,
Yeah.
secondary location.
Yeah.
That's in a different time/place. Like, I don't know how often that happens at all.
Yeah.
Because nowadays they usually just, like, are always with each other, companion and doctor.
Yeah, like I don't remember how much this happens, and I feel like it probably does happen more when you have like a bigger TARDIS team. Like I feel like Five's gang is likely to split up a bit more. But like there definitely is, like, to some extent it does kind of feel like, well, they stick together because one part of the doctor companion equation is significantly more fragile than the other. Whereas here, they're both Time Lords. So, like, while Romana's kind of bit is that while the Doctor kind of barely got his way through Time Lord College and was a pretty shitty student, he's had loads of experience just fucking about the universe, whereas Romana did incredibly well in Time Lord College, but has, like, pretty much no experience outside of Gallifrey. So, but even then, like, because she's a Time Lord, like, you definitely feel like he can be a bit more confident to just be like, yeah, I'll leave you and go do something else because I can trust that you're not going to, like, disintegrate.
Yeah, and that comes across in the characterization too, because eventually, you know, skipping ahead a bit, she's like, oh yeah, I can build this thing you need. So she has, like, the, like, technical, like, smarts, but then, like, she doesn't quite get what the Doctor sees.
Yeah.
Until he, like, spells it out for her.
Yeah.
Which is, like, it's a neat dynamic between the two.
Yeah.
It's a shame, you know, I know it's a meme where we're all like, whenever there's a mysterious character in, like, modern Who, it's just like, oh, it's like this obscure Time Lord character, it's the Ronnie, it's the monk, or even, like, it's the Corsair. I've fucking heard a few times. And while on one level that's, like, very, like, memey and also probably, like, fan servicey in, like a bad impulse kind of way, I also kind of get it, because it's just like, it'd be neat to have, like, more characters on the Doctor's level, because it's just like, it's an aspect that we, like, don't really get anymore. Like, I guess the last time you could say we kind of got it was Nardole, and, like, that's like different.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I can see what can be appreciated about that by going back to these episodes.
Or, like, late period Clara. But even then, part of the point with late period Clara is that while she eventually sort of became an equal to the Doctor, she's still significantly more fragile and only human, which is what leads to her death. So
I don't mean this as a dig to a recent past era of the show. I swear to God I don't. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
The area that shall not be named, as we're now calling it.
No.
Unless we get it on the spin wheel after this episode.
But yeah, it's not to shit on it. And I legitimately did like this if it was earned. But, like, I forget that by the end, I think by like the beginning of Flux, it's been like heavily implied that Yaz and the Doctor have traveled enough to where she can help co-pilot the TARDIS.
Yeah.
And I forget that technically you could say that by the end of Yaz's time with the Doctor, she's as, if not more experienced with things than Clara and 12 are.
Oh
Which
god.
just feels like on paper, because, you know,
Yeah.
last era problems, not going to relitigate that again. But that's funny to me. Anyway.
Yeah,
Aside,
it makes Power of the if you read it like that, it makes Power of the Doctor's ending even fucking funnier. But you know,
true. I brought that up as a compliment to the episode.
Yeah,
and technically to Yaz as well, because like I want more characters to either be on that level with the Doctor or like more likely now these days get to that place, because then the chemistry and everything just like hits on all the right cylinders more and more and more.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like a lot of this episode, like even though it's from 1979, like it's fucking 45 years old at this point. Despite that, like it really shows how much, like, yes, the show has changed and adapted over the years, but there are some bits of it that are just timeless and always a part of the show. Like, there's so many bits in this where I'm like, oh, I could totally see this happening in a modern episode. Like when the Countess like pulls out, like opens this secret cabinet and pulls out this manuscript that's like the first draft of Hamlet. And Four looks at it, he's like, yeah, that's my handwriting. He had a sprained wrist, so I had to do it for him.
Which implies that the Doctor has met Shakespeare multiple times.
Oh man, wait. God damn it! That makes Shakespeare Code even fucking crazier. God damn it.
Exactly. It's just like, I just want to believe that there are multiple historical incarnations that just like know the Doctor well enough that like them coming back with a different face just like doesn't phase them at a certain level. Houdini's obviously one of them.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh my god, I completely forgot one of the best gags all the way back from episode 1. The reading thing reminded me when they're sitting in the cafe and he fucking flips through a book in 2 seconds and is like, yeah, I read the whole thing. It was all right.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. I love it so much when they just do like, because Time Lords are like, yes, there are some things about Time Lords that are explained, but there are some things that aren't. And I love when they just come up with some weird ass quirk and just be like, yeah, that's a thing that they can do for the funny.
Like when they threw out like that he has how many brains, like 4 brains or something.
I think that was a joke, but yes.
Well, because Eccleston does that in his first episode, right? He's just like, like,
oh yeah, he does. They call that back. That's great. I mean, I'm sure it's an intentional callback. Like, this is one of the most beloved episodes. This also actually did have the all-time highest rating for an individual episode with 16.1 million views. However, it is important noting that it's a slightly skewed number because the story was transmitted at a time when ITV was on strike, so there literally was nothing else on TV. So if you were going to watch TV, you were going to sit down and watch City of Death. And honestly, there are worse things you could be watching. I mean, also, just if I remember correctly, 1979 was a pretty dreary fucking year for the UK in general, so...
A few things happened that year.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, move into this finale, and they jump forward to, or jump back to this like primordial Earth, and I love how at this point, like Duggan's just given up and is like fully just rolling with it, even though you get the sense that he doesn't entirely like believe or grasp the fact that he's standing on the Earth 400 million years ago. He's just given up questioning it.
You know, I feel like he's the type of man who would step off the TARDIS, go back to his life, and literally never think about it again.
Yes. No, he doesn't
Yeah.
even comment. Like, admittedly, like, by the time that he gets in the TARDIS, you're in, like, the last 5 minutes of the episode, and they need to wrap it up. But, like, he doesn't even comment on the TARDIS being bigger on the inside. He's just totally rolling with it. And it's like, it is so, like, it is kind of remarkable that, like, for an episode that is this beloved and has like such great characters, none of these fucking like one-off characters have ever come back for Big Finish. But like, I think that's a good thing, because Duggan should just walk off and just become a character in a different show that isn't a sci-fi show. Because he is such an utterly normal person.
You know, I would really love like just a Doctor Who thing that crosses over with like some random crime show thing, but it happens
Yeah.
like before the time set of the crime show or whatever. So it just implies
Yeah.
that this character like all along has been like went with the Doctor, saw everything, came back, and has never mentioned it since, and has just been like a normal detective since then. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, also, it was very funny. The other thing about the "we're on film" joke is I made that observation in the server, like literally right as John Cleese came on screen in that one-off scene, and I was like, what the fuck? Did I summon him? Which, yeah, it like there's I think there's a couple other like British like notable British television actor cameos in this episode. I wouldn't know. I wasn't alive in the 70s and I didn't watch UK television. But I recognize John Cleese.
Yeah, I would imagine the woman he's with is probably like another
Yeah.
name actress, maybe like the I don't know, she's like a tour guide or like
Yeah, the tour, the
caretaker.
Louvre tour guide, yeah.
Yeah, I just realized it's appropriate for the Fourth Doctor face to be the caretaker, even more with this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know that this was like one of the Doctor Who episodes, if that makes sense, until like after I finished it, and then I was just like, you know what, that tracks.
Yeah.
This deserves it. Sometimes you hear that and it's just like, it's more of like an in fandom thing. It's just like, well, it doesn't make sense. But this one definitely, like, it's on the merits.
I mean, unlike one of the other highest rated Fourth Doctor episodes, this one doesn't have any racism in it.
Oh dear.
Is that the
Talons.
Yeah.
Talons of Wang Chiang.
We do this long enough, we're gonna have like a part of the spinner thing that's just like episodes #code of honor. Like,
Yeah. No, the classic Demon Pit, I feel like, based on how... So it's so fascinating because I've heard both, like, yeah, the racism is really inexcusable, but the episode slaps, and no, the episode's just kind of bad, and I've never seen Talons. So if we ever get around to that, I guess I'll have to find out. But yes, I would also like to say, as an aside, that Scaroth and his whole deal is extremely Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers score. I will not elaborate, because there are people who listen to this podcast that play that game, and the character in question is a spoiler. But what I was reminded of when they were trying to talk to Scaroth about, like, no, don't do this, it's not worth it, is there is a line that the main villain of Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, who is, like, similarly, like, a person out of time from a civilization that existed long before any of the current civilizations that exist in the game now. And he has a line where he says, "I do not consider you as being alive, ergo I will not be guilty of murder if I kill you."
slaps.
I also think it is extremely funny that the bit continues to the point where the thing that defeats the main villain is Duggan punching him in the face.
Just incredible payoff.
Just like, okay, yep, that's it. There we go.
There's something admirable about a show that could so easily like devolve into technobabble. You know, you see some shows fall into this, like Godspeed, Star Trek Voyager. But just simple solutions. Just feels good, man.
Yeah.
It's bold to be talking shit about Star Trek Voyager in front of me.
Look, all I know about Star Trek Voyager is that apparently the finale is like all the serious stakes have already been dealt with, but Janeway decides that she hasn't won hard enough, so she goes back in time to win even harder.
I don't remember the finale, so I can neither confirm nor deny this.
Yeah, that's right. Let's just say, Marvel rightfully has the superior endgame title.
I also appreciate that, like, after him just relentlessly just dunking on Duggan the entire episode, like when he takes down Scaroth, he's like, wow, that's the most important punch anyone in the history of mankind has ever thrown. Great job, man.
It is just such a Doctor Who thing that there is just a minor recurring bit that happens maybe 3 times that Duggan keeps throwing punches at the wrong time and they're too effective. And then it immediately escalates to he has literally saved the entire human race by punching a guy. Like, no in between, no escalation, just, come on, man, you gotta stop knocking out the guards when we want to question them, to, you have saved humanity.
Yeah. It's so good. It is so good. I also like the bit at the end where they have this discussion where Duggan's like, but that's a fake Mona Lisa. And he's like, no one will notice. It was made by the real person. And it's the only one left in existence. And yes, the words, this is a fake, are written underneath in felt tip. But if you have to go looking for that to decide whether or not it's art and whether or not it's good, then you've kind of missed the point entirely.
But Doctor Who has only recently been woke.
Yeah.
That's a new thing.
Yeah. I also think, honestly, like, this bit at the end is on par with all of the, like, amazing, like, zinger lines that Moffat or RTD have written to, like, explain the character and the premise, where Duggan's like, where are you guys from? And he's like, and Four's like, the best way to find out where you've come from is to find out where you're going and work backwards. And he's like, well, where are you going? And he's like, I don't know. And Ramona's like, yeah, I don't know either. And they just walk off. It's great. All right. Does anybody else have anything they would like to bring up before we move on to ratings?
Ramona is very pretty.
Yeah, Ramona is great.
True.
I do kind of wish Ramona would come back at some point. Just probably not as a companion, but like it'd be nice to have her back again. She's really cool.
Yeah. I do also hope we just in general get more alien companions in the future.
Yeah. Even though I think that's probably pretty fucking unlikely.
At
least until another showrunner gets in charge.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get Moffat too.
All right. Well, moving on to ratings, I did not come up with a fancy summation write-up for this episode, so I'm just going to spitball it and just say, yeah, this is just an all-around fucking incredible episode that is incredibly entertaining and lots of fun. It feels like a almost trad Doctor Who runaround in the best of ways, but it's decided to take all of these vibes and tropes of your normal Doctor Who runaround and play them as a comedy and do it incredibly well because it's, of course, being written by the one and only Douglas Adams. So everyone is incredibly witty, incredibly funny, and just constantly verbally sparring with itself. It also has, I think, one of the strongest supplemental casts I've seen in any classic episode, and honestly, even a decent chunk of modern Who episodes. Just absolutely fantastic secondary characters and a excellent villain who manages to achieve the very difficult task of being able to keep up with the largest weirdo ham to ever ham and chew scenery, Tom Baker. This is like a plus S tier episode. I honestly don't think I can come up with any flaws. It was just so much fucking fun to watch.
Yeah, this is a simple but effective script, and when you have performers as good as these, both, I guess, like main cast and supplementary, it just elevates all of it. The chemistry's there from the word go. There's a very effective integration of the Paris scenery with the classic, not exactly corridor fest, but more like conservative, limited, like, scenery of Doctor Who. Simple plot, but done very well. There's so many points where we've all been talking about the comedy of the episode that isn't even necessarily like punchline based, but just like little moments that even we didn't get through all of them, whether they happen to be with the random scientist or continued allusions to Duggan's uncanny punching ability. I'm, of course, thinking about Romana's exchange with him about how he'd make an omelet, or I guess another one would be Tom Baker commenting on how violent their butler is and how he found that fun. And then just like even more side characters, like we didn't really talk much about the antagonist's wife.
Oh yeah.
And she's really not like driving anything in particular. She's kind of just there to be like a scenery and like maybe like a C tier character, like femme fatale kind of thing, which is appropriate because I believe she was like a Bond girl or something, or like in one of the Bond movies as like that kind of archetype. So yeah, just like everything came together to make an episode that was just an overall like great watch. It's not heavy like the last Tom Baker episode we did, or some of the best that Doctor Who is, but it's a fun time. It reminds you really what a big part of television is, which is entertaining people. And in that regard, it succeeded with flying colors. This is a very solid A to A plus for me.
Yeah, this was the very first classic story I watched as a child in my aunt's basement on VHS. And I have a distinct memory of the Doctor saying the word ostentatious very early on. And at the time, I knew what that word was, and I was very, very proud of myself for it. And so I was delightfully rewarded to rewatch it and see that he is still just as verbose as ever. And please, please, please bring back TV dialogue like this. Please let TV dialogue be witty and intelligent again. I really need this in my life. Overall, brilliantly written episode, just incredible dialogue, incredible performances. There's just some really entertaining practical effects throughout, but just the writing is what carries it. Just the absolute deliveries from Tom Baker. Just like, you watch this episode and you get it. You get why he was the guy for so long. Like,
yeah,
he just embodies the Doctor in an incredible way. Yeah, I don't know that there's much more I can say. It's just a really well-written, witty, incredible episode. Has this good central conceit and it plays it out like it should, and has one incredible bit that it pays off perfectly. I would say this is like a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, this definitely was one of the best episodes that I've ever seen. And most of the other episodes on this wheel that I'm about to spin are also very good episodes. But there's, as always, looming menacingly is the Chibnall Demon Pit. So I'm just going to have to spin this wheel and see what we get. Let's go. Yes, yes, yes! No! Fuck! God damn it! 7 again!
Yay!
Fuck! Okay, alright. I was really hoping it was going to be 3. That's the second episode in a row that we thought it was going to be 3 and then we got fucked over. Damn it. All right. Well,
as
it's
long
7.
As it's not Chibnall.
Yeah. All right. So I guess next week we're going to be getting real. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I picked. We're going to be getting real weird with it and checking out the macabre, surreal horror episode Ghostlight. Until then, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at B2TARDISPod. And I'm Geoff. You can follow me on Twitter at WheatleyDL.
I'm Aurora of the Iridescence. You can follow us on Twitter at Ahura Borealis for all your mediocre shitposting needs.
I'm Lumian. You can follow us on Twitter at AGPenis.
And we will see you all next time.